Hello there, this is Sheetal Thakre. I am Microsoft Certified Trainer, and the topic under discussion is Microsoft Graph Permissions with the Postman API tool demonstration. Now we will check first what are Microsoft Graph Permissions. Then we will explore the Postman tool, the steps to execute the demonstration, and then we will have the actual demonstration of the concept. So first we will check what are Microsoft Graph permissions. So why to use and when to use the Microsoft Graph permissions? If you are designing any application and the application needs to access Microsoft Cloud data, you will use the Microsoft Graph permissions. There is Microsoft Identity Platform, which can authorize your application to access the data in the Microsoft Cloud. This app can be granted the privileges to access the cloud data using two ways, Microsoft Graph and RBAC, role-based access control, like we use in the Microsoft Entra RBAC. In some cases, the access to the data through this Microsoft Graph APIs might require both, as in Microsoft Graph as well as RBAC. Microsoft Graph permissions, they are categorized under two types, delegated access, application only access. In delegated access, as the name suggests, the application calls Microsoft Graph on behalf of signed in user. Whereas in case of app only access, the app calls Microsoft Graph with its own identity, that is without signed in user presence. So here you find the request API permissions are delegated permissions. Your application needs access to the API as the signed in user, and application permissions, which are also referred as app only access. So your application runs as a background service or daemon without signed in user. Microsoft Graph permissions under delegated category are also called as scopes, and they work in the delegated access scenario. Means that the permissions let the application act on behalf of signed in user. But the application cannot access anything the signed in user cannot access. For example, an application gets the read all for the file. It's a delegated permission on behalf of user Tom. So now here, the application can only read all the files in the organization that Tom can already access. If Tom is not having access to any file, the application cannot read it. So Tom might be able to access these files because the user Tom is being given the permission in any of the following ways. Tom created or is the owner of file. The files are shared directly or indirectly with the user Tom, or Tom has the granted permission through the RBAC. So now in delegated scenario, the privilege that the app has is to act on behalf of user. It is determined by the Microsoft Graph permissions that the app has been granted and user's own permissions. In the delegated access scenario, the app might allow user to sign in with their personal Microsoft accounts as well. Like the Outlook, work or school accounts, or both account types. All delegated permissions are valid for the work or school account, but are not always valid for the personal Microsoft accounts. When a user signs into the application, user, or in some cases, an administrator gets a chance to consent to the delegated permissions. And if they grant consent, the app can access the resources and APIs within the boundaries of the user's permission. Second category of Microsoft Graph permissions are application permissions. They are also called as app roles. They work in the app-only access scenario and without signed-in user present. The application can access any data that the permission is associated with. For example, an application granted files read all application permission can read any file in the organization. For apps that access the resources and APIs without a signed-in user, an administrator consents to the application permissions when the app is installed in the tenant or through the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. Who can consent to the application permissions on behalf of all users? So only privileged role administrator and global administrator can consent to the application permissions. Here we find the comparison of delegated and application permissions. So when one should go for delegated permissions, if you are designing web applications, mobile or single page application. But if you are going for web or daemon, use application permissions, which do not require signed in user present. What is the access context? Get access on behalf of user for the delegated, whereas get access without user for the application. Who can consent? In delegated permissions, user can consent for their data or even admins can consent for all the users. Whereas in case of application permissions, only admin can consent. What are the other names for the delegated permissions? Scopes, auth to permissions. Whereas for the application permissions, app roles, they are also known as app-only permissions. Application permissions are also referred as direct access permissions. What is the result of consent? In case of delegated permission, it will be the object auth to permission grant. Whereas in case of application permissions, it is app role assignment. So these are the supported sign-in audience type for the delegated, whereas these are the supported sign-in audience types for the application permissions. So here you find that personal Microsoft account is not last category, is not listed. The visual representation makes it more clear that in case of delegated access, the application privileges to the data at resource depend on the user permissions as well application permission. Whereas in case of app only access, the app privileges depend only on the app permissions. Are there any limits on the requested permissions per app? So here you find Microsoft Entra ID limits number of permissions that can be requested and consented by the client app. So here you find who are the allowed users, maximum permissions the app can request. This column is maximum Microsoft Graph permissions app can request, whereas maximum permissions that can be consented in a single request. So here you find for the Azure AD My Organization about 155 delegated permissions and 300 application permissions. Whereas for Azure AD multiple organizations, you get the same limit about 155 delegated permissions and about 300 application permissions. These limits are subjected to the revision, so always refer the recent document for the revised data. Now we will explore the Postman API tool. So what is Postman API tool? Postman is the unified platform for designing, testing, distributing, documenting, and monitoring APIs. It provides the governance which is required by the enterprises by enabling different teams to collaborate with each other seamlessly throughout the API development. How one can access Postman API tool? By using this URL. Go to postman.com. What are the prerequisites for the demonstration of Microsoft Graph permission using Postman API tool? You need to register the application in the Microsoft Entra ID, for which you require a workforce or external tenant. You can use the default directory, Azure account that has active subscription. Azure account must have at least application developer role, and you will require the role privileged role administrator or global administrator to consent to application permission. What are the prerequisites for Postman platform? Go to www.postman.com, register and create the free account and sign in. What are the steps to execute the demonstration of Microsoft Graph permission using Postman API tool? So you will create the Azure app registration. You create the client secret. Copy and paste the value of client secret into the notepad. Next, from the registered application overview page, copy tenant ID, client ID into the notepad. Then from the API permissions of the registered application, you delete the default permissions and add delegated permissions to read all groups. Then go to Postman tool. You create the workspace. Search for the Graph, Microsoft Graph API and create the fork. Then you go to Microsoft Graph's created fork, authorization, and select the authentication type as Open Authorization 2.0, OAuth 2.0. Copy and paste the value of callback URL into the notepad. This value you are going to use in the registered apps redirect URI with platform type web. This can be found from the overview page of the registered app with the portal.azure.com. Now you go to Postman tool, create the environment variables with the name tenant ID, client secret, and the values for above are retrieved from the step number 2 and 3. Next step is you test delegated permission by going to the delegated group, get group. You will be getting the empty token error. In case of empty token error, generate the access token and repeat the step number 9. Now from the API permissions, delete the default and delegated permissions and add application permission to read all users' data now. Now grant the admin consent for above added permissions and go to the Postman tool to test the application permission by going to application user get users. So again, in case of empty token error, you generate the access token and repeat the step number 13. Now we will have the demonstration of all this. Before that, we will go through the screenshots. App registration will be done in the portal.azure.com. So here you find I am in the portal.azure.com with my credentials. Search with the app registration in the search resources services docs and go for new registration. Give the name for your application and select accounts in this organization. In the redirect URI, you will select the category web and you are pasting here the callback URI you have copied from the Postman tool. Once the application registration is done, you go to Manage, Certificates and Secrets, create the new client secret. Here we have added one application client secret for certain validity period. Once the client secret is added, make sure you copy its value, paste it in the notepad, because once you change the screen, this value will disappear. So this can be copied. This will be visible to you only once. So copy paste it into notepad. This you will be using with the environment variables in the Postman tool. Then you go to Manage from the registered application, API permission. Default permissions you will remove and you will go to add permission. Microsoft API, Microsoft Graph. You get the two types of Microsoft Graph permission, delegated application. You select the delegated permission, search for the group permission and assign read all, read write all on the group. Add permission. So you find the group permissions are now added, which are of type delegated, and they are not granted for the tenant. So signed in user is required. When you want to test the application permissions, similarly you select the add permission, Microsoft Graph, application permissions for reading user data. Give the permission to read all the basic data of the user. Add them. And here you find these permissions are added under the type application. Now, the admin will grant or consent to this for all the users. So click here. Now you find these application permissions, they are granted by the global admin. So grant admin consent. Now you go to Postman tool. You find I have logged in with the Gmail account here. I have selected my workspace. Then I search here with the Microsoft Graph. Select the Microsoft Graph. From the Microsoft Graph, 3 ellipses, right click, create a fork. Name your fork. It is created in the workspace. Now you are into your workspace. Collection is Microsoft Graph, new fork created. Here you get the template for testing delegated and application permissions. In the overview page, you get the information about Microsoft Graph and related permission. Now from the Microsoft Graph collection, newly created fork, you go to Authorization tab and select the authorization type as Auth2. Scroll down and copy paste the callback URL into Notepad. This you are going to use in the redirect URI of the registered app. Now you create the environment variables in the Postman app. So select the environment, create the environment. I have created the environment with this name. And now you need to add the variables. So the variables I have added are tenant ID, client secret. The values for the variables, environment variables in the Postman tool, you will get from the overview page of the app which you have registered with the portal.azure.com. Client ID, tenant ID, and in this certificate and secrets, you have already copy pasted the value of secret, client secret. Redirect URL is where you have added callback URL from the Postman app. These are the values you have copied into the environment variable of the Postman API tool. Once creation of collection and environment variable is done, now you go and test the delegated API is working or not. Make sure that the environment variables, they are selected here for the Microsoft Graph collection and the newly created 4. So select delegated, groups and get groups. So we get the command here to request the data from the Microsoft Entra ID related to the groups. Now, once you send the request, it will give you access token is empty. So you go to delegated. So to generate the access token, go to delegated, authorization, check that authorization type is OAuth 2. Scroll down, go to configure new token. Make sure it is delegated token. Scroll down, check whether the client ID and the other environment variable information is available, is green. Now you generate the token. So delegated token value will be given to you once the user signs in. As this is delegated permission, it is requesting the permission. This app is requesting the permission to read all groups, read write all groups, and sign in and read your profile. The signed in user has to consent or accept this. Authentication will be complete. New access token will be generated. Click on use token. And now again you send the get group data request with the token. So you find the delegated permission has received the data about the groups from the Microsoft Entra ID. Next, you test the application permissions in the similar manner by going to the application from the Microsoft Graph collection. Make sure environment variables are selected. Go to user, get user, request, send it. You get the access token is empty message. Generate the access token by going to the application, authorization, generate new access token. New access token is generated. Now it is not asking for the user to sign in, as these are application permission. Use this token and again with token you send the request to read the users. So you find now the Entra ID user data is received. Now the same concepts we are going to demonstrate using the portal.azure.com with the Postman API tool. Now we are in a portal.azure.com. I am signed in with my credentials. We search with the app registration and we create new application. So Jan 2026, new app. Account in this organization, directory only. For the redirect URI, select the web and this URL we will get from the Postman app. We register the app. Once we receive the notification, app is created successfully. We go to manage. Once the app is registered, we go to manage and create the client secret. New client secret. Valid for say 3 months. Make sure to copy this client secret value. Paste it in the notepad. Similarly, you copy from the overview page client ID and tenant ID. Now you go to the API permissions. Delete the default permissions. Click on add permission. Microsoft APIs, Microsoft Graph, delegated permission, and we use delegated permission for accessing group data. Add permission. Check whether Microsoft Graph permission for the group read under delegated category are added. Now you go to postman.com. I am signed in with my Gmail. You can create the workspace. I already have my workspace created. Search for Microsoft Graph. Create a fork. Click on 3 ellipses. Create fork. In the newly created fork, you find there are templates for the delegated API permission testing, application permission testing. We are in the Microsoft Graph, newly created fork. We go to authorization. Select the authorization method. Open authorization 2.0, OAuth 2.0. Scroll down. Here you find callback URL. Copy this callback URL, paste it in the notepad. You are using this in the registered app redirect URI. Go to the overview, redirect URI, add redirect URI. Under the web category. And say configure. So now in the overview, you will find one web category redirect URI is filled. Go to the Postman app. Create the environment. Create environment. Add the variables. So we add the variable client ID, tenant ID, client secret. Client secret is a sensitive information. We select the type sensitive. These values we have copy pasted in the notepad. You get these values from the overview page of the registered app, client ID, tenant ID, and check whether you can get the secret from here. This value is not now available to be copied. So go to notepad. You have already copied the value of So from the notepad, we are copying the value of client secret. So here we select the created environment. We go to the collection and make sure that the environment variables are selected. Now to test the delegated permission, go to the delegated, groups, get group. This is the request we are sending to the tenant or Entra ID. So we get access token is empty message. So we go to the delegated authorization. We make sure authorization method is OAuth 2.0. The client ID and client secret values are available. And we try to generate new access token. So it is asking the signed in user permission to read the all groups. So we accept on behalf of signed in user. Authentication is complete. We proceed. We use this token. And now again under delegated, we try to get the group data with the access token. So now we are able to get the group data from the Entra ID, DNS admin group, and all other group names. So this is the demonstration of delegated permissions, Microsoft Graph, delegated permissions using the Postman API tool. Now we go for the registered app API permission. We remove the delegated permissions. we add Microsoft Graph application permission for reading the user data. Search with the user. Let us say user read basic and read write, add permission. Type is application and make sure to grant the admin consent. Click on this. I have the global admin role, so I can grant the admin consent. So you find user read user data under the type application. Status is granted for the tenant. Now we go to the Postman tool. Now we go to the application permission. So testing application permission for reading user data. Get user request we send. Again, the access token is empty. So we go to the application authorization. Make sure authorization type is OAuth 2.0. Values of client secret are available. Authenticated without signed in user, we proceed. Use this token and again we send a request to get the users. So with token, the request is granted permission and we get the user data, metadata, user data. So this is the demonstration of Microsoft Graph permission. Thank you.